Good morning, Noodles. You're on with Lieutenant Eric and, of course, Will Fraser, who you remember from back in the day. So it's nice to get the band back together again. Sans Dustin Nielsen. But let's just dive into it, Noodles. Your thoughts, and I want to kind of get the grand scope from you for these two road games in St. Louis and Dallas. A possible 4 points on the table. The Oilers are returning home with 1. Your thoughts?
Well, they should have had 4. You look at it. I mean, they're critical mistakes at the wrong time. I mean, St. Louis, that looked like an easy 1 point. You're gliding through it and 90 seconds left, and you don't get a block from the forward. He makes it look like he wants to get in the lane, but Roslovic needs to be better on that play. And Evan Bouchard got out of the slot because he didn't want to get hit by any shrapnel, and that leaves a player wide open. And Pickard needs to be better with his rebound control on that play. So there's mistakes there, but you shouldn't allow it to happen at that critical of time. I think a lot of people have to own that. And the same thing, like, I don't know, these 2-goal leads they just want to give away. It's not bearing down. And it's I always look at it. There's been 2 culprits that I obviously follow Edmonton Twitter and all of that type of stuff, that the Pulse. Evan Bouchard and Stuart Skinner have taken the most bullets right now. The unfortunate part, and I said this to a friend that lives in Edmonton, is, recently in games that they've lost, like, their goaltender has been the second best goaltender on the ice every night. And that's, I thought Skinner made some good saves last night, but you need a save on the Rantanen goal. In the shootout, it would be nice if your goaltender actually steals one instead of the other guy making saves. So, that's a lazy narrative, but I think it's become a true narrative too, is you need saves at the right time. And, I know Stuart Skinner's on the clock. I think Calvin Pickard's on the clock, but, the team has to have some urgency. And I can't lay that all at Calvin Pickard's feet. As I mentioned, there were mistakes in front of him with 90 seconds left in St. Louis. And those are just details of the game. If you don't want to be on the ice in 90 seconds left, then the coach shouldn't put you out there if you don't want to block a shot. If Evan Bouchard doesn't want to get underneath the stick and win a physical battle, then he shouldn't be on the ice with 90 seconds left. So there's lots of blame to go around. But at the end of the day, this is a team I think is really good, but just kind of going through the motions and doing enough to get a point here, doing enough to stay in the mix. But they're not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and if it's not one thing, it seems to be another night after night, and you're lacking that complete product, I guess, at this moment. But really, like last night, there was a little blood in the water, and you mentioned the second best goalie. I mean, nothing against Casey DeSmith, but when Jake Ottinger's out of the lineup and they have some of their top guns as well out of the lineup, I know that Stars team is deep, but that was really an opportunity, especially, again, when you're up by 2. It seems like they shouldn't actually take 2-goal leads. Maybe that's a game plan where you don't want to go up by 2. Just keep it up by 1 and play a tight game.
Well, how about go for a third goal? I mean, McDavid hits a post on that 2-on-1, and then he scores afterwards. Like, you look at it, there were opportunities. If you're wide open in the slot, they keep hitting the goaltender right in the chest. Now, the goaltender's aggressive there, but they had some chances, and you've got to find a way to bury it and bear down. And then conversely, in your own defensive zone, I think the tying goal is a bad luck play. It hits a leg and goes, Skinner can't get across on the play. There, like you said, there always seems to be something. St. Louis, it's Emberson loses his stick, and, it just stuff like that where you're like, okay. But to me, there has to be some urgency in that room. And I look back and everyone has to wear it. McDavid has made some plays where you're like, that's not characteristic of McDavid. Now, their power plays bailing them out. Their penalty kill can be better. But I think it's one player or the other. There's a different person that is culpable every night. So they've got to find a way to put it together for 60 minutes. It's not going to get easier. Your next opponent is Colorado. So, I will say they've had a tough schedule, played a lot of road games. Their home schedule or their home record is good, but their road record stinks, and they have to have more urgency in their game.
And this is a tough month as well, with a lengthy road trip coming up through the East and some tough teams at home as well. I wanted to get your thoughts too, because as you mentioned, a lot of people, night in, night out, you can, a lot of people wear it. And after St. Louis, and you mentioned kind of the vibe around this team and the killer instinct, how much do you subscribe to the theory or fact that, this does stem from coaching? Everybody, I know Knoblauch signed the extension, fans in this market, and everybody jumps on something and they want to get on it. And now everyone, going on Chris Knoblauch and saying, well, his demeanor, I mean, this is a guy, again, we will say in retort that he's taken them to 2 cup finals now and gone the limit. But how much of that do you read into his demeanor and that kind of oozing its way through the lineup and leading to, again, this time of the season where you do have to just stick around. I mean, you don't need to go undefeated through October. It'd be nice from a fan point of view, but how much do you kind of read into, that being the cause of the effect that we're seeing on the ice with some of the lackadaisical approach?
I think coaching has to wear some of it as well. I'll be honest, I feel like I would like to see Knoblauch have some more accountability with some of the players that have been repeat offenders, we'll call it. But I can also understand his demeanor and thought process. And what I mean by that is he's looking at a group that's played a lot of hockey. He's looking at a group that he knows what they're capable of. We don't know what gets said behind closed doors. But I'll give you an easy example, and it might be a lazy one, but Bouchard turns pucks over. You can miss a shift. Jason Strudwick had a great idea the other day where he's like, you don't sit Bouchard, but you take him off the power play. Take him off things where he's actually, really accessible and really good at. That's punishing somebody not being on that power play. Maybe give Jake Wallman a look or Darnell Nurse on the first power play, just in punishment. To me, there has to be some accountability with that group. And it's a fine line. And I think you give these guys a long leash. And I understand where Chris is at. But I also look at the details of defensive coaching. I'll give you an example. And I don't know what Mark Stewart does with these guys, but to me, there's been a lot of the same mistakes from the same people. So are they doing video? Are they doing enough? And I'll give you an example. I played for the Florida Panthers. I know that coaching staff and that. Talking to Seth Jones on the ice when they won the Stanley Cup, he said he got to Florida and he did 2 weeks straight of video to learn how to play for this team, to play for that team. And it took him a long time. And he said they were constantly on him about learning the details. Is the coaching staff doing that every day with these players? Are they sitting down with players that are making repeated mistakes and saying, here's your spacing, here's what we expect of you. This is the standard that we're setting. So I'm not absolving anybody. The players are the ones who play, the coaches are the ones who place them in a situation. But I think everyone can be better. And I would argue that the coaching staff can be better in some of the details, or maybe some of the players they deploy at certain times of the game. If you don't think that Jack Roslovic can block that shot with 90 seconds left, don't have him on the ice. If you don't think Evan Bouchard's going to win a physical battle in front of the net with 90 seconds left, don't have him on the ice. Have somebody you believe will knock them on their ass or win a 50-50 battle. To me, that comes with the players. Obviously, they're the ones who have to own it, but place somebody in a situation that will give you that success at that particular time.
Early season malaise for the Oilers has kind of become the most predictable thing in this town over the last 5 years. This just feels pretty typical of this team, but are we maybe losing sight of the idea of league-wide parity? Because you look at the standings and the Oilers are not alone in a disappointing start. Florida Panthers are in 8th spot in their division. Washington Capitals are in 8th spot in their division. You even look at the Minnesota Wild in 7th spot over in the Central. There's quite a few teams that we would expect a better finish than what their start has been so far.
100%. Well, it's a great point. Even coming into this season, I would argue I thought there was one team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, that were going scorched earth trying to rebuild, and they've had a great start. You look at all the other teams that we'll call them quote unquote bottom feeders. Okay. Last year, they've all gotten better. San Jose, Anaheim, Chicago, they're all turning the corner. Those young players are becoming very good players. Calgary had 96 points last year. They've got 3 regulation wins.
Yeah.
You look at it, you're right. St. Louis lost 7 in a row, find a way to beat Edmonton in regulation. The parity in the league has never been more apparent because you can wake up, like you just said, the Florida Panthers in 15th place today in their conference. And tomorrow they can be in 3rd in their division just because of a win or a loss of some of the teams around them. So Edmonton's lumped up into that. I would argue that 10 games from now, you are going to see potentially some separation.
Right.
Edmonton has to find a way with them, some consistency. And again, I'm not absolving them, but if you look at their strength of schedule and stuff, yes, they've lost to teams that they probably should have beaten, but they've also played the lion's share of their games on the road so far, and they've had a tough schedule. So I look at other teams that maybe the scheduling's been a little bit more favorable that have stumbled out of the block. I would be more concerned about them than I'd be concerned about Edmonton.
Is there also a bit of we've seen this in years past when there's Olympic involvement. Is there a compression effect to this schedule?
Yes, 100%. Where you're trying to manage players. There's times, like I say, we're not getting peak McDavid right now. You see in him, he's bobbling pucks, he's missing passes. That's not McDavid dialed in. But, Draisaitl's picked up a lot of that slack. I think I've really been impressed with his effort level on some of the things. The back checks, some of the details of the game, I think he's really concentrated on that. But they've played a lot of hockey. So, compressed hockey, lots of travel, all of that type of stuff, going to 2 cup finals in a row. There's 10 excuses you want to build in. But at the end of the day, we in the media, we as fans, we're talking about it, what we see daily. It's not our fault. We're talking about it daily. So we live with the losses and live with the wins and talk about them. We can look at big picture, and that's maybe where the coaching staff and Knoblauch is saying, breathe, this group will be fine. I think there will be one other thing that you could add to this. You're probably going to get an injection of life with Zach Hyman coming back. I think that's that could be a shot in the arm or maybe, an inspiration for the group. He plays a certain way with a standard that drags everybody into it. So, I would argue that the guys who are kind of on the bubble, who may be in the lineup or out of the lineup, need to produce, because when Zach comes in, he's not going to be a healthy scratch. So, I think that's something that maybe Edmonton is waiting for as well, as you get a guy like Hyman who could help bring up the work or the consistency of the work ethic.
It's a great point, Noodles, and we've been waiting for his return anxiously here. But I guess Roslovic's been turning it on game by game here. Who comes out of that top 6 when Hyman does return, in your opinion, right now? Would you?
I don't know, because I think Roslovic and Mangiapane have actually done a really good job. Mangiapane's looked, like he's settled in. I mean, is it Podkolzin? Although Podkolzin has done a pretty good job of being kind of a heavy straight line player. Like that is a great question as to, do you go McDavid, RNH and Hyman, put the band back together? Do you do Draisaitl, McDavid and Hyman, and then find a line with RNH and Roslovic and Mangiapane? It's interesting. They will have the luxury of trying all of this stuff out. But again, that's why the coach gets paid a lot of money. And that's why, we're sitting here firing bullets on him saying, hey, you got to be better in this situation, you got to be better. Usually Knoblauch presses the right buttons to find the right mix. That's the one thing he's really good at. So I know Hyman's not going to be out of the top 6. He'll be playing there the minute that he steps back in. So really it's Podkolzin, Mangiapane or Roslovic, and Mangiapane and Roslovic and Podkolzin have all looked pretty good where they've settled.
Yeah, it's a tough problem, but it's a good problem to have moving forward. And I know we're all waiting for Hyman to get back. And as you mentioned too, I think you can talk excuses, but I think there are reasons as well, and you need to frame it in that regard as well, and not make too many excuses, but just state the reasons why they are where they're at. Appreciate your time again, Noodles. Have a good week, and we'll talk next Wednesday.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jamie.